In 2019, the Scottish wildcat was considered extinct. The Caledonian forest, its home for millennia, had shrunk to less than 2% of its original extent, so in 2023, Scotland took an unexpected step. 19 cats were released into the wild. That was only the beginning. Within 2 years, there would be 46, and then something would happen that no one standing in that forest on a summer morning had anticipated. For months before the release, the cats had lived in enclosures right at the release site, among the same sounds, smells, and weather they would have to live with. This is called a soft release. Studies of comparable projects show it significantly reduces post-release mortality. For a population of this size, every individual counted. The breeding enclosures are located in a quiet, visitor-restricted corner of the Highland Wildlife Park. When kittens reach 6 to 8 months, the age of natural separation from their mother, they are moved to pre-release enclosures. These are larger, naturalistic spaces with dense vegetation, hiding spots, nesting sites, and complex climbing structures. There is no contact that might teach a cat not to fear humans. More than 100 cameras are installed throughout the breeding center. In the breeding enclosures, they record whether pairs have mated. In the pre-release enclosures, they analyze behavior to confirm the animals have the skills needed to survive in the wild. All of this is so that staff need to enter as rarely as possible. To understand what happened in the forest, you first need to understand what had been absent from it and for how long. The Scottish wildcat, Felis sylvestris, was the only wild member of the cat family native to Britain, a distinct subspecies with a lineage spanning thousands of years on this island. An adult male weighs up to 8 kilograms. It has dense fur and a characteristic striped tail with a solid black tip. It is a nocturnal ambush hunter, silent and so inconspicuous that local people who have spent their entire lives in the Highlands have often never seen one alive. Highlanders call it the Highland tiger. It once lived across the whole island, in England, Wales, and the Scottish lowlands. It hunted voles, mice, hares, and rabbits along woodland edges. It was part of a system that kept the forest in balance. Its silhouette has appeared in the heraldry of Scottish clans since the 13th century. The motto of Clan Chattan was, "Touch not the catbot, a glove," which means do not touch the cat without a glove. The animal that became a symbol of untouchability disappeared quietly, without a single official announcement. Then came 3 waves of destruction. The first was persecution. From the medieval period through to the end of the 19th century, the wildcat was systematically killed by gamekeepers and landowners who classified it as vermin. By some documented accounts, 274 individuals died on just 40 estates from 1984 to 1985 alone. That is only what was recorded officially. Perhaps the only thing that saved the Scottish wildcat from complete annihilation in the 20th century was the First World War. Many of the gamekeepers and farmers who had been killing cats went to the front, and the species gained a brief pause in which to partially recover its numbers. That is one of the most unexpected facts in the entire story. The second wave was habitat loss. The Caledonian forest, the wildcat's natural environment, had by the early 20th century contracted to less than 2% of its original range. The third wave was the most dangerous, and it did not arrive with a rifle. When the population fell so low that mates of the same subspecies simply no longer existed, the cat began interbreeding with feral domestic cats. Geneticists at RZSS established that in some wildcats, the domestic cat genome accounted for up to 74% of the total. Scientists called this genetic erosion. Feral domestic cats carry another threat that is rarely discussed: disease. Unvaccinated animals can transmit feline leukemia virus, feline immunodeficiency virus, and cat flu to wildcats, all potentially lethal to a wild population. From 2018 to 2019, an IUCN cat specialist group published an independent assessment. The Scottish wildcat was functionally extinct in the wild. The wildcat received legal protection only in 1988. By that point, the population was almost certainly already in a critical state. The species was protected by law when there was almost nothing left to protect. What the cat did to the forest after its return did not become clear immediately. One of the released cats crossed the Cairngorm Plateau and headed toward Mar Lodge Estate, owned by the National Trust for Scotland. In spring 2024, the field team noticed something unusual in the GPS data for two females. The range of their movement had contracted sharply. Activity was concentrated on a small patch day after day without variation. For experienced biologists, that pattern means one thing. They set up cameras and waited. What the cameras recorded, no one expected to see in the very first year after release. The kittens answered one question, but while the team was watching the cameras, another question was already beginning to form, and it concerned not the cats themselves. In tropical ecology, there is a concept long considered purely theoretical until field studies began confirming it again and again. A mesopredator returns to a system, and what happens is not what anyone expected. It does not simply reduce the number of prey, it changes their behavior. The field vole consumes its own body weight and plant material every day, including bark, roots, and young shoots. But where a predator appears, the vole changes its routes. It avoids open ground. It reduces its time on the surface. It stays closer to the burrow. Studies in commercial orchards have shown that even without any reduction in rodent numbers, a behavioral shift alone under predator pressure is enough for young trees to survive where they previously could not because there are fewer rodents, but because the rodents have become more cautious. For a seedling rowan or birch, the difference between a vole is here and a vole is afraid to be here is the difference between a dead tree and a living one in the first winter. Researchers from the Wildlife Conservation Research Unit at Oxford University, who monitored wildcat populations in Scotland from 2010 to 2015, recorded one detail that proved to be decisive. The wildcat lives on woodland edges, precisely at the boundary where open grassland meets the forest floor. These are exactly the zones where young Scots pine, birch, and rowan most often die before reaching a height beyond a vole's reach. 46 cats, 600 square kilometers. On paper, 1 cat per 13 square kilometers. But if each of them is maintaining behavioral pressure on rodents along several kilometers of forest edge, the cumulative effect could be disproportionately large relative to the number of animals involved. The home range of a wildcat in the Cairngorms National Park area has been estimated at between 2.44 and 3.8 square kilometers. In other words, each cat controls a specific, measurable stretch of woodland edge, and that stretch is where young trees grow. That is precisely why scientists are not yet drawing conclusions. Camera traps around the enclosures recorded some cats hunting and eating small mammals shortly after release. Subsequent scat analysis confirmed the central role of the field vole in the cat's diet across the Cairngorms Connect landscape. GPS data corroborate this further, showing the cats prefer rough grassland, scrub, and clear-felled areas, the exact habitats where voles are most concentrated. There is a second line of influence that researchers discuss separately. In eastern Scotland, hares and rabbits can account for up to 70% of a wildcat's diet where their density is high. The brown hare in winter strips the bark from young trees. In the Cairngorms, birch and rowan bark remains vulnerable until a tree reaches roughly 1 meter in height. The indirect influence of the cat through controlling hare populations may prove even more significant for forest recovery than the direct effect through voles. And then there is a third scenario. It is the one discussed with the greatest caution. The capercaillie, Britain's largest grouse, is critically endangered. As of 2022, only 542 birds remained in Scotland. 85% of them live in the Cairngorms. The primary driver of decline is nest destruction by foxes, crows, and pine martens. Research identifies their combined pressure as the decisive factor in clutch survival. The wildcat theoretically occupies a similar ecological niche to the fox. Both are nocturnal predators of woodland edges. Could the return of the cat redistribute predator pressure at critical nesting sites? No study of this interaction in Scottish conditions has yet been published. Cameras at nesting sites are already in place. The answer is still ahead. Before discussing the future, a conflict nearly ended the whole project. At Clashendarroch Estate in Aberdeenshire, at least 35 wildcats were found, a significant proportion of the entire known population. At the same time, Swedish energy company Vattenfall submitted an application to clear ancient forest on the same site to construct wind turbines. More than 800,000 signatures were gathered against the felling. Something unusual happened. Conservationists and gamekeepers, two groups that had spent years on opposite sides of disputes over the wildcat, suddenly found themselves standing together. Gamekeepers believed the cat would be lost to hybridization. Conservationists believed that without habitat protection, any reintroduction plan was pointless. Both groups were right, and both signed the same petition. It was not the only time gamekeepers ended up on the side of the project. 13 estates across the release zone worked with the team, monitoring cat movements, protecting their territories, and reporting suspicious activity. The same estates where previous generations of gamekeepers had collected bounties for dead cats as vermin were now ensuring those cats survived. This is not a minor detail. Without that shift, no GPS collar in the world would have saved the project. Clashendarroch reminded everyone of something simple. Even the most carefully designed species recovery plan is worthless if the forest disappears before the cats have had time to take root in it. As of mid-2024, the project had spent £2,486,295 in the local Cairngorms economy through local procurement, employment, and tourism. Beyond Scotland, something new is now underway. In December 2025, Devon Wildlife Trust published a 2-year feasibility study on wildcat reintroduction in southwest England. The conclusion was that Devon and Cornwall have sufficient woodland cover to support a viable population. 71% of local residents backed the idea. The University of Exeter found that 83% of 1,425 respondents supported reintroduction, significantly more than the organizers had anticipated. Parallel assessments are ongoing in Wales and northern England. Norden's Ark in Sweden and the Junta de Andalucia in Spain are exchanging genetic material between isolated populations across Europe. But between the Cairngorms and Scotland's Central Belt, Edinburgh and Glasgow, not a single confirmed individual exists. The boundary the cat has not crossed in 110 years remains a boundary. Devon is still only studying. Wales is still only assessing. The earliest realistic date for first releases outside Scotland is no sooner than 2028. Here is what has already been documented with certainty. Since 2023, 46 cats have been released into the Cairngorms, only 4 confirmed deaths in 2 years. For predator reintroduction programs worldwide, that is below average mortality. 9 females reached reproductive age after release. 7 females produced litters, a total of 9 litters, and 24 kittens during the spring and summer of 2024. A further 5 litters were confirmed in 2025. GPS data showed that released males and females found each other during the winter breeding season independently, without any assistance, across 600 square kilometers of forest and heathland. This is the behavior of a wild population. A volunteer documenting the understory in the Cairngorms has 2 photographs of the same corner of forest. The first, 2022, bare ground, no regeneration above ankle height. The second, 2024, 8 rowan seedlings, the tallest reaching the knee. Between them, there was no tree planting, no rodent removal program. Researchers logged the observation and are not yet drawing conclusions. But the question those 2 photographs pose has not gone away. Scots pine regenerates slowly, even without rodent pressure, from seed to a 2-meter tree, at least 10 to 15 years. Some areas of the Cairngorms show almost no natural regeneration even after deer populations were reduced, simply because seed stock is absent. The wildcat may change the conditions for young growth, but it cannot compensate for the absence of seed. The system is more complex than any single hypothesis. That is precisely why scientists are framing their questions carefully, not out of fear of being wrong, but because they know that a premature conclusion in ecology always costs credibility.